She didn't hesitate. That was either her biggest mistake or the bravest thing she had ever done. The man standing outside her small house didn't look dangerous. He looked exhausted. Not physically, spiritually. The kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones after months, maybe years, of fighting battles no one else can see. His jacket was wrinkled, expensive fabric rendered ordinary by neglect. His pride was bruised in a way that showed in the slump of his shoulders, the careful neutrality of his expression. His hand was wrapped tightly around the tiny fingers of a 6-year-old girl who was clearly trying not to cry, her bottom lip trembling with the effort of being brave. "I just need one night," he said quietly. His voice was educated, refined even, but threaded through with something raw. Desperation, maybe. Or the kind of honesty that only comes when you've run out of alternatives. She crossed her arms, instinctively defensive. She didn't have money. She didn't have space. Her house was barely 900 square feet, inherited from an aunt who'd believed she deserved more than the neighborhood thought she did. She barely had stability. Her cleaning jobs were irregular, her bank account a constant exercise in creative mathematics. But she had something wealth couldn't manufacture: heart. The little girl looked up at her, big brown eyes, solemn and ancient in that way children get when they've witnessed too much too soon. Her clothes were designer, a pale pink dress with delicate embroidery that probably cost more than 3 months of rent. But she was clutching a stuffed rabbit that had clearly seen better days, its ear hanging by a thread. "We don't make noise," the child whispered. A promise, a plea, and that was it. The door opened. She stepped aside, gesturing them into the cramped living room with its second-hand couch and walls that needed painting. The man's relief was palpable, a physical thing that seemed to make him sag further into himself. He murmured thanks, his voice thick. The little girl remained silent, pressed against his leg like she was trying to disappear into him. "Bathroom's down the hall," she said, her tone brisk to cover the uncertainty suddenly flooding her chest. "I'll make up the couch. There's leftover rice and beans if you're hungry." "We don't want to impose—" "You're already imposing," she interrupted, not unkindly. "Might as well eat." A ghost of a smile flickered across his face. "Thank you. I'm Marcus. This is Zoe." She nodded. "Keisha." And with that simple exchange, she opened not just her door, but a war she didn't see coming. The first night, they were model guests. Silent, grateful, almost invisible. Marcus slept on the couch. Zoe curled against him like a parenthesis. Keisha heard him wake several times, his breathing shifting from the deep rhythm of sleep to the careful alertness of someone listening for pursuit. The second morning, she found him making coffee. Real coffee, not the instant stuff she bought. With beans he must have walked to the corner store to purchase. The kitchen smelled rich, expensive. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know." He poured her a cup, "But I wanted to." They didn't talk much. Keisha had learned early that some stories needed time to emerge, couldn't be forced. Instead, they fell into an easy rhythm. She went to work, 3 houses that day, her knees aching by the time she finished the third, and came home to find dinner waiting. Nothing fancy, just pasta and vegetables, but prepared with a care that suggested he actually knew what he was doing. Zoe remained quiet, coloring in a notebook with worn crayons Keisha had found in a drawer. But on the third day, when Keisha sat down next to her, the girl looked up. "Your house is small," she observed. "It is," Keisha agreed. "I like it." Zoe's voice was barely audible. "It feels safe." Something in Keisha's chest cracked open. "Good," she managed. "That's what it's supposed to feel like." That's when the phone rang. She almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, probably spam. But something, instinct maybe, made her pick up. "You have something that belongs to me." The voice was smooth, controlled, each word precisely enunciated, dripping with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. A woman's voice, but not warm, clinical. "I have a father and a child," Keisha replied calmly, her eyes finding Marcus across the room. He'd gone completely still, his face draining of color. A soft laugh echoed on the other end. Not amused, assessing. You have my ex-husband and my daughter. Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. And you clearly don't know who I am. The line disconnected, but the pressure didn't. Keisha lowered the phone slowly. Marcus was standing now, hands clenched at his sides. Zoe had stopped coloring, her crayon frozen mid-stroke. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have warned you. I should have." "Who is she?" "Victoria Ashford." He said the name like it tasted bitter. "Venture capitalist, billionaire. Forbes list, charity galas, the whole performance." Keisha processed this. She'd heard the name, vaguely. Seen her face in those glossy magazine spreads they kept in the waiting room at the free clinic. Beautiful, polished, untouchable. "And you were married to her. For 7 years." Marcus's laugh was hollow. "I built her empire. The algorithms, the market analysis, the risk assessment models everyone thinks are her genius, mine. All mine. She was the face. I was the foundation she never acknowledged. So leave. Take half. That's how divorce works. That's how divorce works for people who play fair." His voice was quiet, defeated. "She has lawyers who cost more per hour than you make in a month. No offense. None taken. It's probably true. She has judges in her pocket, investigators on retainer. When I said I wanted out, wanted custody, even just joint custody, she made it clear what would happen. She'd destroy me, professionally, financially, publicly, and she'd make sure I never saw Zoe again." Keisha looked at the little girl, who was now clutching her rabbit tightly, her eyes too knowing. "So you ran?" "So I ran." He rubbed his face. "I have evidence, documentation. Things she doesn't know I copied. But I needed time. A place she wouldn't think to look. I was going to stay in a shelter, but those aren't safe for kids." "No, they're not." Keisha stood, walking to the window. Her neighborhood wasn't much. Working class, mostly Black and Latino families. The kind of place people with money drove through quickly with their doors locked. But it was hers. And now, apparently, it was a battlefield. "She's coming after me," Keisha said. Not a question. Probably. Marcus's honesty was almost refreshing. She doesn't lose, ever, and she hates being defied. "Well?" Keisha turned back to face him. "She's never fought someone with nothing to lose." Within 48 hours, Victoria's machine began its work. First, Keisha's cleaning job at the Preston residence, her most reliable client, 3 times a week for 2 years, was suddenly no longer available. Mrs. Preston couldn't meet her eyes when she delivered the news, her hands twisting her designer scarf. "I'm sorry, Keisha, you've been wonderful. It's just, we're making changes." "What kind of changes?" "Family changes." The lie was transparent. Mrs. Preston was a terrible liar, her guilt written across her face in obvious tells. "I'll give you a reference, of course." "Of course." Keisha kept her voice level, professional, even as fury burned in her gut. She knew exactly what kind of family changes had occurred. The kind that came with a phone call from someone with enough money to make problems disappear. The second strike came from her landlord. Mr. Chen had owned the property for 15 years, had always been fair, even kind. He'd let her slide on rent twice when she was between jobs, had fixed the water heater without raising her monthly payment. But when he showed up on her doorstep on Friday evening, he looked uncomfortable. "Keisha, I need to ask you something." "Come in." He stayed on the porch. Bad sign. "Are you? Is there any illegal activity happening in the house? Drugs? Stolen property?" She stared at him. "You serious right now?" "Someone filed a complaint. Said there's suspicious activity. Strange men coming and going at odd hours." "Strange men?" She let the words hang there, let him hear how they sounded. "You mean Marcus, who's been here less than a week, who leaves once to buy groceries and comes straight back?" I didn't say I believed it. Mr. Chen's discomfort deepened. "But I got a call from the housing inspector's office. They want to do a full inspection. Check for code violations, occupancy limits, all of it. We both know this house passes code. We do. But they can make life difficult. And I can't afford." He stopped himself. "I'm sorry, Keisha. I'm not trying to kick you out. I'm just asking you to be careful." She understood. Mr. Chen was a small-time landlord, just a working man trying to build something for his retirement. He couldn't fight City Hall, especially not if City Hall had been greased by billionaire money. "I'll be careful," she promised. The third strike was the most insidious. A lawyer showed up at her door on Monday morning. Young, expensive suit, briefcase that probably cost more than her car. He handed her papers with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Williams, I'm Gregory Abbott, representing Victoria Ashford in a custody matter. These are notification papers informing you that you're currently housing a fugitive parent who has violated a custody agreement. Continued harboring could result in charges of custodial interference, which carries significant penalties in this state." Keisha scanned the documents. Legal jargon mostly, but the threat was clear. "Help Marcus go to jail." "There's no custody agreement," she said. "They're divorced. He has every right to his daughter. The divorce is pending, and there is a temporary custody order in place granting Mrs. Ashford primary physical custody pending the hearing." He pulled out another document, pointing to highlighted sections. "Mr. Winters removed the minor child from her primary residence without authorization and has refused to disclose his location. That's parental kidnapping under state law." I'm not here to argue, Miss Williams. I'm here to inform you of your legal exposure. Helping Mr. Winters could be construed as aiding and abetting. You seem like a good person. I'd hate to see you caught up in something that could destroy your life." The threat was delivered with professional courtesy, which somehow made it worse. After he left, Keisha sat on her couch for a long time. The papers spread across her coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. Marcus was out with Zoe, walking to the library. Small trips, keeping the girl occupied, maintaining some semblance of normalcy. She could end this. Ask them to leave. Protect herself. The billionaire never yelled. She didn't need to. She bought the room. She bought the silence. She bought the fear. But she couldn't buy her. And that was new territory. When Marcus returned, Keisha showed him the papers. He read them carefully, his jaw tightening. "It's all fabricated," he said finally. "There's a temporary order, yes, but it was obtained ex parte without me present, based on lies. She told the court I was emotionally unstable, a flight risk. Had a psychiatrist she'd paid testify about my concerning behavior. Were you there to defend yourself?" "I never got the notice. It was sent to an old address. Convenient." He set the papers down. "This is what she does, Keisha. She doesn't fight fair. She rewrites reality until her version is the only one that matters. So what's your version?" He was quiet for a long moment. Zoe was in the kitchen, drawing at the table, far enough away not to hear. "The truth? I stayed in that marriage 3 years too long because I was afraid. Not of her, of losing Zoe completely. Victoria she's brilliant, charismatic. She can convince anyone of anything. And she made it clear, if I left, if I fought back, she'd make sure I was painted as the villain. The vindictive ex-husband trying to destroy a successful woman, the deadbeat dad who contributed nothing. But you built her company." "I did, but I was stupid enough to do it without proper contracts, without equity agreements. I trusted her. We were married. I thought," he laughed bitterly, "I thought love meant something. What changed? Why run now?" She started doing it to Zoe. His voice went flat, dead. The manipulation, the control, using her as a pawn. "I watched my daughter learn to read her moods, to perform, to be whoever Victoria needed her to be in that moment. She's 6 years old, and she's already masking, already terrified of disappointing someone who's impossible to please." Keisha thought of Zoe's whispered promise. "We don't make noise." So I packed a bag during one of Victoria's business trips, took Zoe, left. Marcus met her eyes. "I know how this looks. I know I'm asking you to take an enormous risk for people you don't know. If you want us to leave, I don't." "Keisha, I don't," she repeated firmly. "That woman doesn't get to buy me, doesn't get to scare me, and she sure as hell doesn't get that little girl." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Gratitude, relief, and something else. Recognition, maybe. Like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started." The war escalated. Victoria didn't come in person. Not yet. She sent proxies, investigators who interviewed Keisha's neighbors, asking questions designed to paint her as reckless, unstable. A social worker showed up, claiming there'd been an anonymous report of child endangerment. The woman was professional, apologetic even, but thorough. She inspected every room, asked Zoe careful questions in private, examined the refrigerator contents. She left after an hour with a neutral expression and no promises. She'll report back that everything's fine, Marcus predicted. But it doesn't matter. Victoria's building a narrative. None of this has to stick. It just has to create doubt. But Keisha had her own resources. They weren't expensive, they weren't fancy, but they were effective. Her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, had been a court stenographer for 30 years. She knew every lawyer in the city, every judge, every clerk. She made calls, asked questions, pulled threads. This Victoria Ashford, she reported back, sitting in Keisha's kitchen with terrible coffee and the kind of gossip that could change lives. She's got a reputation, smart as hell, but cold. 3 assistants quit last year citing hostile work environment. She settled all 3 cases with NDAs. Can we use that? Maybe. But here's the interesting part. Her company's being investigated. Nothing public yet, but the SEC's got questions about some of her offshore accounts. Marcus's head snapped up. What kind of questions? Tax evasion, possible fraud. Nothing proven, but where there's smoke. Mrs. Rodriguez shrugged. My cousin works in the federal building. She says there's definitely a file. She's hiding money, Marcus said slowly. Shell companies, probably. Routing investments through tax havens. I helped set up some of those accounts before I realized what she was really doing. Can you prove it? I can. He stood abruptly, began pacing. I documented everything. Not because I planned to use it, because I'm thorough. Because I wanted to protect myself if things went wrong. Every transaction, every transfer, every falsified report, it's all backed up. Where? Encrypted cloud storage, multiple locations. She doesn't know about it. Keisha felt something shift. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This was about power, about leverage. Then we have options, she said carefully. Blackmail? Marcus looked uncomfortable. That's not blackmail. Insurance. Keisha leaned forward. She's coming after you with everything she's got. Legal, illegal, doesn't matter to her. You need something that makes her stop. Something that makes fighting you more expensive than leaving you alone. It could backfire. She's already doing her worst. What else you got to lose? He couldn't answer that. The turning point came on a Thursday. Victoria Ashford arrived in person. Keisha was pruning the small garden in her front yard when the black SUV pulled up. Tinted windows, custom plates. The vehicle alone probably cost more than Keisha would earn in 5 years. The driver opened the back door. Victoria emerged like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Tailored suit, dove gray, probably Italian. Heels that cost more than Keisha's mortgage payment. Hair pulled back in a severe bun that somehow looked elegant. She was beautiful in that calculated way wealthy women often were. Symmetrical, polished, expensive. She looked at the modest house with visible disgust. The peeling paint, the chain link fence, the garden where Keisha grew vegetables because it was cheaper than buying them. How much? Victoria asked. Not a question. A habit. Keisha straightened slowly, wiping dirt from her hands. Excuse me? For your silence, your cooperation, whatever you want to call it. Victoria's voice was crisp, businesslike. Name your price. I'll have my assistant transfer the funds today. I'm not selling anything. A laugh, sharp, dismissive. Everyone has a price, Miss Williams. The only variable is whether they're honest about it. Then I guess I'm a variable you can't calculate. Victoria's eyes narrowed. She was used to being the smartest person in every room, used to reading people, finding weaknesses. But Keisha had been invisible to people like Victoria her entire life. That invisibility had taught her how to be unreadable. You're making a mistake, Victoria said. You have no idea the resources I can bring to bear. I've got some idea. You got me fired. Scared my landlord. Sent lawyers to threaten me. Real impressive. That was me being polite. Victoria stepped closer. I can destroy you. Your credit, your reputation, your ability to work in this city. I can make sure you're unhireable, unleashable, unbuyable, Keisha finished. Yeah, that's the one you're having trouble with. The mask cracked, just for a second. Fury flickered across Victoria's perfect features. She wasn't used to resistance, wasn't wired for it. You're protecting a man who stole my daughter. I'm protecting a father and a child. Big difference. He's nothing. A mid-level employee I was kind enough to marry. Without me, he'd still be teaching statistics at some community college. Without him, you'd still be selling timeshares in Scottsdale. Victoria went very still. Excuse me? I looked you up, read the whole story. The rags to riches narrative you sell to Forbes. Pretty good fiction. Except Marcus told me the real version. About the algorithms he designed, the risk models, the market analysis that made your first billion. All yours, right? Except for the part where it wasn't. That's when Marcus stepped onto the porch. He'd been inside with Zoe, keeping her away from this confrontation. But apparently he'd heard enough. He was carrying a messenger bag. Victoria's eyes locked onto it. Marcus, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. His voice was steady now. No more exhaustion, no more defeat. I'm choosing our daughter over your empire. Our daughter is fine. She has the best of everything. Private school, tutors, opportunities you could never? She has a mother who uses her as a prop, who coaches her on what to say to reporters, who punishes her for being 6 years old. Marcus opened the bag, pulled out a folder. I have recordings, Victoria, of you screaming at her, calling her stupid, telling her she's an embarrassment. Victoria's face went white. I have emails, he continued, his voice gaining strength, between you and your lawyers, discussing how to manage the father problem, how to eliminate his credibility, how to make sure I understood the consequences of non-compliance. That's privileged communication. Attorney-client, I have the tax documents. Marcus pulled out another folder. The real ones, not the versions you filed, the offshore accounts, the shell companies in the Caymans, the money you moved to avoid paying your fair share. All of it. Documented, cross-referenced, ready for the IRS. Victoria's composure shattered completely. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Marcus stepped down from the porch, moving to stand beside Keisha. You taught me everything about leverage, about finding weakness, about applying pressure until people break. Congratulations. I learned. I'll bury you. You'll do nothing. His voice was cold now, clinical. Because if you fight this custody case, all of it goes public. The fraud, the tax evasion, the abusive recordings. Your investors will run. Your board will force you out. The SEC will investigate. And you'll lose everything you've spent 15 years building. You're bluffing. Am I? Marcus pulled out his phone, started typing. I'm sending one file to my lawyer right now. Just one. A small sample. He'll forward it to the appropriate authorities if he doesn't hear from me every 48 hours. That's my insurance policy. Victoria looked between them. The black cleaning woman who wouldn't be bought. The ex-husband who'd learned to fight back. This wasn't a problem money could solve. This wasn't a negotiation she could win. For the first time in perhaps her entire adult life, Victoria Ashford was out of moves. What do you want? She asked finally. Joint custody, legal and physical. A fair division of assets. Retroactive payment for my intellectual property. And you stay away from Zoe unless supervised. If I hear you've been manipulating her, coaching her, using her for your publicity machine, all of this goes public anyway. That's not joint custody. That's you taking everything. No, that's you keeping your freedom, your company, and partial access to your daughter, in exchange for not being indicted. Marcus's voice softened slightly. This is the best deal you're going to get, Victoria. Take it. She stared at him, at Keisha, at the modest house that had somehow become her Waterloo. Fine. The word seemed to physically hurt her. My lawyers will draft the papers. My lawyers will review them. Victoria turned to leave, then paused, looked back at Keisha. You think you've won something. You haven't. You're still exactly what you were. Nobody. Keisha smiled. Maybe, but I'm nobody who beat you. The SUV door slammed. The vehicle pulled away. Keisha and Marcus stood in silence for a long moment. Is it over? Keisha asked finally. The custody fight? Probably. She's pragmatic. When she can't win, she pivots. Marcus let out a long breath. But she'll make me pay somehow. Professionally, socially. She won't let this go completely. So what now? He looked at her. Really looked at her. Now I rebuild. Properly this time. With contracts and equity and everything I should have insisted on the first time. Alone? I was hoping not. Marcus's voice was careful. You're smart, Keisha. Street smart in ways I'll never be. You see things I miss. And you? He stopped himself. I don't want to insult you with some kind of rescue fantasy. You don't need saving, but I could use a partner. Someone I trust, if you're interested. Keisha considered this. She'd spent her entire life cleaning other people's houses, making their lives easier while her own stayed difficult. She'd never imagined anything different. But then again, she'd never imagined standing up to a billionaire either. What kind of partnership? Business? Equal. I have the technical skills. You have the people skills, the instincts. We build something new, something clean, something ours. He pulled out another folder. I have the algorithms, the real ones, the ones she's been using. They're mine. I can prove it. We start a consultancy, market analysis for small businesses, startups, people who can't afford the big firms. Make it accessible. You're talking about real money? Eventually, yes, but it's a long game. 2, 3 years before we're stable. 5 before we're competitive. It's a risk. Keisha thought about her cramped house, her irregular work, her constant struggle to make ends meet. Then she thought about Zoe whispering that the house felt safe, about Marcus making coffee without being asked, about Victoria's face when she realized money couldn't fix this. I'm in, she said, but I want 49%. You keep 51. You're the genius. I'm the muscle. 50-50 or no deal. Marcus, 50-50. Equal partners, equal say, equal risk. He extended his hand. Otherwise, you'll always think of yourself as the junior partner. And I need you all the way in. She shook his hand. His grip was firm, honest. Okay, she said. Let's build something. The transition wasn't smooth. Victoria did exactly what Marcus predicted. She whispered to her network, made sure certain doors stayed closed, used her influence to create obstacles. But she'd underestimated something crucial. Marcus had built her empire, which meant he knew everyone she knew. Every investor, every developer, every analyst. And a lot of them had their own grievances with Victoria Ashford. Her arrogance, her habit of taking credit, her willingness to destroy anyone who challenged her. When Marcus and Keisha launched their consultancy, Wallace Analytics, named deliberately to avoid either of their names, they weren't starting from zero. They were starting from a network of people who'd been waiting for an alternative. The first year was brutal. Keisha worked 2 part-time cleaning jobs to keep money coming in while they built the business. Marcus coded 16-hour days, developing their proprietary software. They operated out of Keisha's kitchen, taking meetings in coffee shops, pitching small clients who couldn't afford Victoria's firm. But they had something Ashford Ventures didn't: integrity. When they told a client the numbers didn't work, they told the truth. When they saw a bad investment, they said so, even if it cost them the contract. When they made mistakes, and they did, they owned them. Word spread. By year 2, they had enough clients to hire an assistant. By year 3, they'd moved into a small office. By year 4, they were competing for mid-size contracts. And Victoria? She was still successful, still wealthy, still powerful. But her empire had cracks now. The SEC investigation hadn't led to charges. Her lawyers were too good. But the publicity had damaged her reputation. Investors were warier, partners more skeptical. More importantly, she'd lost the thing that had made her truly formidable: her strategist. The custody arrangement held. Zoe lived with Marcus during the week, spent weekends with Victoria in the mansion. Supervised visits at first, gradually relaxing as Victoria learned, slowly, painfully, that her daughter wasn't a chess piece. The little girl thrived. She was still quiet, still thoughtful, but there was a lightness now. She laughed more, played more, brought home art projects that were messy and imperfect and completely hers. She called Marcus's apartment home, but she also called Keisha Auntie K. And on the weekend she spent with Victoria, she talked about both of them. Not to hurt her mother, just to share her life, to include everyone she loved. Victoria hated it at first. The idea that her daughter loved someone she'd dismissed, someone she'd tried to break. But over time, years really, something shifted. It happened gradually. A civil exchange at a custody handoff. A brief conversation about Zoe's school. An acknowledgement of Marcus's business success that wasn't quite congratulations, but wasn't hostile either. They would never be friends, but they learned to be what Zoe needed them to be, co-parents. 5 years after that first desperate knock on her door, Keisha stood in the conference room of Wallace Analytics. The office wasn't huge, but it was theirs. Glass walls, modern furniture, a team of 12 employees. Marcus was presenting to a potential client. Major corporation, the kind that would have laughed them out of the room 3 years ago. But they'd seen Wallace's track record, the accuracy of their predictions, the honesty of their assessments. They wanted in. Keisha watched Marcus present, confident, articulate, commanding the room, and thought about the exhausted man who'd stood on her porch, begging for one night. After the meeting ended successfully, after the client left with promises to send over contracts, Marcus turned to her. "We did it," he said. "You did it. I just answered emails." "We did it," he repeated firmly. "None of this happens without you. None of this happens without you knocking on a stranger's door. None of this happens without the stranger opening it." They'd had this argument before. They'd probably have it again. That was the nature of partnership. Disagreement, respect, shared success. That evening, Keisha drove to her new house. Not huge, but bigger than the old one. In a better neighborhood, fully paid off. She could have moved into something fancier. She had the money now, but she liked this one. Liked the garden space, liked the community, liked that it felt like hers. Earned through work, not given by circumstance. Zoe was waiting on the porch, working on homework. 11 now, growing into herself. Still thoughtful, still kind, but with a core of steel that reminded Keisha of someone. "How was school?" Keisha asked. "Good. We're learning about entrepreneurs in history class. I told them about you and Dad. We're not history yet. You will be." Zoe said it with absolute certainty. Mrs. Patterson said entrepreneurship is about solving problems. You solved Dad's problem. Then, you solved problems together. That's what makes someone a real entrepreneur. Keisha sat down beside her. "Your dad solved his own problem. I just opened a door." That's what entrepreneurs do, though. They open doors. Zoe looked at her seriously. "If you hadn't opened yours, none of this happens. Dad doesn't have his company. I don't have my family. Mom doesn't learn to be better. She's trying? She's trying." Zoe's voice was careful, honest. "She's not great at it yet, but she's trying. She asks about my week now, actually listens. She's not just performing for cameras." "That's good." "It is." Zoe returned to her homework. "Auntie K, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why did you help us?" "Really? You didn't know us. We could have been anyone." Keisha thought about this. She'd asked herself the same question 1,000 times. "Because someone helped me once," she said finally. "When I was about your age, my mama got sick. Real sick. We didn't have insurance, barely had food. Our neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, lived 3 doors down. She brought us meals every day for 6 months, paid our electric bill twice. Never asked for anything back. What happened to your mama?" "She got better. Took a while, but she recovered." Keisha smiled. "I asked Mrs. Johnson the same question you just asked me. Why'd you help us? Know what she said?" Zoe shook her head. She said, "Because I can. Because you needed it. Because that's what people do. No big philosophy. No expectation of reward. Just human decency." "Is that why you did it? Human decency?" Partly, but also because your dad looked at you the way my mama looked at me, like you were his whole world. And I thought, anyone who loves someone that much deserves a chance. Keisha paused. Plus, you promised not to make noise. Zoe laughed. We made a lot of noise eventually. The good kind. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set. Inside, Marcus was making dinner. He'd gotten good at cooking, found it meditative after long days of code and client meetings. This was their life now. Unconventional, blended, built from nothing by people who'd been underestimated. Keisha's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, but curiosity made her open it. I thought you should know. The Ashford Foundation is making a major donation to the city's housing assistance program. $10 million. It'll help hundreds of families avoid displacement. V. Keisha stared at the message for a long moment. Then she replied, "That's good work." The response came quickly. It's a start. Not friendship, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement, growth. The kind of change that happened slowly, painfully, in people who'd spent their lives believing they were right. Everything okay? Marcus asked from the doorway. Yeah. Keisha pocketed her phone. Everything's good. And it was. Not perfect, not easy, but good. They'd built something real. Not just a business, a family. The kind that chose itself, that fought for itself. That survived because it was founded on something stronger than money or blood. Respect, trust, love. The little girl who'd whispered promises about being quiet had found her voice. The man who'd been dismissed as nothing had proven his worth. And the woman they'd called insignificant? She'd proven that dignity couldn't be bought or sold, only earned. And she'd earned hers.